The steady barrage of rockets fired by Hezbollah into northern Israel shows no sign of slowing down. But despite this, the weakness of this evil organization is on display for all to see. It is more isolated than ever before, and its enemies inside Lebanon and in the wider region are losing their fear of openly confronting it. In the last 24 hours, IDF spokesman in Arabic, Avichai Aderi, published a video from within the Lebanese territory warning the Lebanese about the consequences of proximity to Hezbollah. In response, Hezbollah Secretary General issued a threat that if the IDF hits Beirut, Hezbollah will hit Tel Aviv, a central Israeli city. Meanwhile, the IDF has once again struck Hezbollah positions in Syrian territory, eliminating dozens of terrorists in the city of Palmyra. There's also a question about where Hamas leaders are currently located. Are they still in Qatar? Are they settling in Turkey? Or have both of these countries bowed to the United States' pressure and told the Hamas leadership to leave? There is also a question about whether there will ever be a true ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. What's left of Hamas seems to be settling into a quiet regime of guerrilla warfare against the IDF and de facto management of the civilian population of the Gaza Strip, whether if they want Hamas to be there or not. Meanwhile, an effort to bring an American private security company into the Gaza Strip to provide safe passage for humanitarian aid shipments is having mixed results. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 412th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, and they're all under the auspices of Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we begin, please look for the subscribe button and click on it so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Air Force fighter jets under the guidance of the Northern Command and the fire array of the 282nd Brigade carried out strikes in southern Lebanon on Sunday, which resulted in the elimination of the operations commander and the anti-tank array commander of the coastal sector of Hezbollah. This evil man and his colleagues were responsible for advancing many terror plans launched towards the Israeli civilians and IDF forces, including anti-tank and mortar fire directed at civilian communities in the Western Galilee and the coastal plain of Israel. Their elimination constitutes another blow to the capabilities of Hezbollah to promote and carry out terror activities against the Israeli home front. But the Air Force did more than just take out these two senior Hezbollah field commanders. In the last 24 hours, the Israeli Air Force attacked more than 100 terror targets in Lebanon, including launchers from which rockets were fired into the Israeli territory and launchers were ready to be fired, as well as weapons depots, headquarters, military buildings, and terror infrastructures. During all of this, Hezbollah has continued to fire a steady stream of rockets into Israel to keep up the illusion that they're still in this fight. Although their rate of fire is a tiny fraction of what it was warned that they were capable of putting up, Israeli intelligence agencies estimate that they will throw everything they can at Israel in the days to come. This is part of their negotiating tactics in the ongoing talks to reach a ceasefire agreement. They don't want to be seen as having been beaten into submission or defeated on the battlefield, although the undeniable truth is that they have been defeated. But in the Middle East, in this culture, there is so much shame associated with this that Hezbollah simply won't be able to agree to a ceasefire unless they can do so with the illusion that they are doing Israel a favor, instead of acknowledging the obvious fact that Israel is doing them a favor. This is a similar pattern to what occurred before the ceasefire in the Second Lebanon War, and also in the many rounds of fighting against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. In this context, it's worth remembering that in Egyptian schools, to this day, students read history books that say that Egypt won the 1973 Yom Kippur War. This is annoying, but it's important to realize that Egyptian President Anwar Sadat could only sign the 1979 Camp David Accords, ending the state of war between Egypt and Israel, if his people believed their honor had been restored by winning that war after suffering the humiliating defeat in the 1967 Six-Day War. This is a small price to pay for almost 50 years of peace between Israel and Egypt, and Israel might have to pay the same small price now to get peace on our northern border. With all of this in mind, on Wednesday, the IDF spokesperson in Arabic, Lieutenant Colonel Avichai Deri, posted a message to the civilian residents of Lebanon on his X account. It included a video he'd filmed of himself standing on Lebanese territory condemning the Hezbollah terrorist organization. They promised you false and empty slogans about being on the road to Jerusalem, Aderi said in this video. But instead, they went on the road to hell and bad fate. And for your southern villages, I say, we will continue to follow you, and the state of the southern villages that Hezbollah has turned into terror strongholds is the best proof of the heavy price that anyone who tries to harm our sovereignty will pay. This is Israel's message to the Lebanese people, and I hope, for their sake and ours, that they take it seriously. However, the new Secretary General of Hezbollah, Naif Qassem, also had something to say on Wednesday. Delivering a speech in Beirut, he made his remarks after agreeing to postpone his response to a ceasefire talk currently underway between Israel and the internationally recognized government of Lebanon under the auspices of American envoy Amos Hochstein. In his speech, Qassem emphasized that Hezbollah will continue to attack Israel as long as no agreement is reached, adding that when the capital Beirut is under enemy attacks, the response must be central Tel Aviv. The enemy must understand that things will not remain like this when it attacks Beirut. He also spoke of thousands of Hezbollah fighters who are determined to fight till the end. But these are simply fairy tales. The truth is that most of Hezbollah's most highly trained and motivated fighters, as well as most of the command structure, have already been removed from the battlefield. Thousands have been eliminated by the IDF, while many thousands more have been wounded so badly that they are no longer physically capable of fighting. The remaining fighting force is disorganized, poorly trained, and poorly motivated, and a large number of them have already thrown down their weapons and joined the civilian refugees that are trying to get as far away from the battlefield as they can. There are already hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians who have fled to Syria and even Iraq, hoping that the fighting ends soon so they can go back home and start the process of rebuilding their lives. Many of these refugees are family members of Hezbollah fighters, and as I said, some of them are former fighters who obviously don't want to fight any longer. This situation undoubtedly puts pressure on Hezbollah to end the war, and the question is not whether Hezbollah will try to attack Tel Aviv, but whether it will succeed. The more pressure on it increases, the more it may try to carry out a significant action that will change the rules of the game and give Hezbollah something to be proud of and to defend its honor. That leads to a question about where things stand now in the negotiations. The American envoy Amos Hochstein arrived in Israel on Wednesday afternoon following his visit to Beirut, where he received Hezbollah's response to the American ceasefire proposal and said that positive progress was made in the settlement talks. Of course, you don't expect him to say anything else unless there's really something substantial going on. In any case, Hochstein was scheduled to meet with Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer. On Thursday evening, the Political Security Cabinet is expected to convene to receive a report on the talks and discuss the next steps. Sources with knowledge of the negotiations noted that there is an understanding that the United States, France, and Britain will have significant involvement in monitoring southern Lebanon in order to make sure that Hezbollah does not violate the agreement. The sources also said that the goal is to strengthen the Lebanese army. there will also be involvement of the armies of Jordan, Egypt, and the UAE in strengthening the Lebanese army. In Israel, cautious optimism is expressed ahead of Hochstein's visit, but alongside this, Defense Minister Israel Katz emphasized the condition of any political settlement in Lebanon is maintaining intelligence capability and preserving the IDF's right to act and defend the Israeli citizens against Hezbollah. This clause, as mentioned regarding freedom of action, constitutes an obstacle between the parties during the formulation of the agreement, and Hezbollah's leader emphasized in his speech that he would not agree to harm Lebanon's sovereignty as part of the agreement. That's ironic, since many Lebanese officials have complained about Hezbollah's very existence as a proxy of Iran being a violation of Lebanon's sovereignty. But that as it may, the emerging agreement includes a test period of a ceasefire for 60 days. During this period, Hezbollah is supposed to withdraw beyond the Litani line based on UN Security Council Resolution 1701 from 2006, and in southern Lebanon, only the Lebanese army and UNIFIL forces will remain. At the end of the period, if the agreement is not violated, IDF forces will withdraw from southern Lebanon as well. Alongside the clauses mentioned, and on which there is an agreement, there are two clauses where gaps have arisen between the parties in recent days: the Freedom of Action Clause and the clause referring to membership in the committee that will oversee the implementation of Resolution 1701. Lebanese sources told Sky News Arabic earlier this week that during Hochstein's visit to Lebanon, a new wording was determined, according to which each side has the right to self-defense if attacked, provided that the United States ensures that Israel does not carry out preemptive strikes. If indeed the parties reach an agreement, the United States will declare the start of the ceasefire. This is the implementation period and the big test to see if Hezbollah actually withdraws to the Litani line and the Lebanese army moves south. The IDF will remain in southern Lebanon during this period, but the deployment on the ground is expected to be slightly different. In any case, at least according to the plan, only the Lebanese army and UNIFIL forces will remain in southern Lebanon at the end of this period. If everything goes as expected and the settlement is achieved soon, the residents of the north will be able to return to their homes, and Lebanese civilians who live in this area will also be able to go home along the border with Israel. It is clear that in the short to medium term, there will be quiet on the northern border, but the real test will be in the medium to long term, where the question is whether UNIFIL forces, with their broad powers, together with the Lebanese army, will be able to uphold the agreement. Most parties in Israel are confident that even in the long term, Israel must remain vigilant, the IDF must respond to any violation, and we will insist that the Lebanese army handles any violation of the agreement on their side of the border. In any case, Israel will have the ability to enforce the agreement and prevent the renewal of the military threat towards the northern communities of the State of Israel. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on any development in the northern sector in the coming hours and days. To stay updated in real time on what's happening in Israel, we invite you to go to our website at tbnisrael.com and subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you'll never miss another update of what's happening in Israel. Switching our focus slightly, the messages coming out of Iran since the victory of United States President-elect Donald Trump are divided into two main trends. The first is fear of the return of the maximum pressure campaign, but the second is an apparent desire to negotiate with the incoming Trump administration. The Iranian regime remembers well the heavy hand of the Trump administration's first term from 2016 to 2020, as evident of the elimination of Qassem Soleimani, the commander of the IRGC Quds Force. Alongside this, the fear in Tehran is also that the Biden administration's willingness to forego strict enforcements of sanctions on oil exports will come to an end with the new administration. That is, Tehran feels that revenue from Iranian oil exports, which soared to significant heights during the Biden era, will suffer a severe blow. These oil revenues have poured billions of dollars into Ali Khamenei's coffers, which are critical for him to manage Iran's shaky economy and continue paying the bills for all of Iran's regional proxy groups. If Iran's income from oil exports drops, the ability of the regime to maintain its control over all these internal and external projects will also drop. This comes at a particularly bad time for the regime, since it is already suffering a severe blow to its prestige because Hezbollah and Hamas have both been crushingly defeated by Israel. On top of all of that, reports have emerged that the Assad regime in Syria has been cooperating with the Israeli Mossad intelligence agency, exchanging information on a number of topics, including the locations of senior Hamas and Hezbollah figures, as well as IRGC officers, Iranian officers. If these reports are true, it helps explain some of the spectacular successes that Israel had in eliminating its most dangerous enemies over the past several months, and it is also very embarrassing for Iran, as well as harmful to its strategic depth in the Middle East. At the same time, international pressure is increasing on Iran over its horrific domestic human rights abuses. The regime fears that the accumulation effect of these developments will lead to the weakening of their regional status and damage their strategic maneuverability. Before we continue, please take a moment to click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. You can also help us by sharing these videos on YouTube and following us on social media. If you'd like to support us financially, go to our website at tbnisrael.com/give. Speaking of media, the Assad regime-linked media portals in Syria reported on Wednesday that there had been an unusually large scale of Israeli strikes in the village of Tadmor near Palmyra, which left 40 people dead and dozens more wounded. Other reports indicated that the target of the strike was Iranian-supported Shiite militias in the area. A statement from the Syrian Ministry of Defense stated, around 1:30 p.m., the Israeli enemy launched an air attack from the area of Tal Tanaf towards several buildings in the city of Tadmor in the Syrian desert, which led to the deaths of 36 people, the injury of more than 50 others, and significant material damage to the buildings. The IDF did not have any comment on these reports, and at this stage, it is unclear what the target of the strikes were and whether it achieved its objectives. Switching our focus once again to events in the Gaza Strip. The IDF continues its extensive operation in Gaza, and Hamas's military wing is taking a severe blow, with many assessments saying that it is near a total collapse. Senior IDF officials report that 23 out of 24 Hamas brigades have been destroyed, and thousands of fighters have been eliminated in targeted IDF operations. Instead of an organized military organization, Hamas has turned into a small guerrilla cells trying to operate independently in the refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, using whatever weapon and equipment that they can find. Nevertheless, the organization continues to try to maintain control over the civilian population through supervision and intimidation mechanisms. Nevertheless, regional diplomats hope that the elimination of Hamas leader Yair Sinwar will provide an opportunity for a ceasefire, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected any proposal that would leave Hamas in a controlling position in Gaza. The military defeat of Hamas provides Israel with an advantage, but it is not the end of the story. There is still the need for someone to manage the affairs of Gaza's civilian population, and although it is clear that Hamas cannot be allowed to continue in this role, it is not clear who else is available to take it on. For that matter, another question is what will happen to the leadership of Hamas outside of the Gaza Strip. For years, these evil men have been giving shelter in the luxury hotels of Doha, Qatar. But recently, it was announced that under American pressure, the government of Qatar said that they are no longer welcome there. This led to rumors and conflicting reports about the whereabouts of the heads of Hamas's political bureau. While the initial assessment was that Hamas's leadership moved to Turkey. A Turkish diplomat source denied the reports, claiming that this is inaccurate information. It seems that Hamas leaders are moving between the Middle Eastern countries but are not staying in Turkey on a regular basis. Sources report that Turkey, under the leadership of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, seek to keep a distance from Hamas due to American pressure, as well as fear that Israel will embarrass them by assassinating these leaders on the Turkish territory. With that in mind, it was recently revealed that Shin Bet head Ronen Bar visited Turkey last week and met with the head of the Turkish intelligence. This gives weight to the assessment that Turkey is not interested in serving as a refuge for the organization's leadership. With the growing tension between Israel and Turkey and the targeted assassinations that destabilize Hamas, it seems that the organization's leaders now live in the shadows, trying to hide from Israeli forces but also from their former allies. In a related story, the United States has taken the step of vetoing a proposed UN Security Council resolution aimed at ending the conflict in Gaza because it did not include a demand for the immediate and unconditional release of the Israeli hostages. The United States representative noted that Hamas, not Israel, stands as an obstacle to an agreement. According to her, Israel has expressed willingness for temporary ceasefires in exchange for partial release of the hostages while maintaining its right to defend itself after the greatest massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. With this veto, it is clear that the United States' position alongside Israel remains strong and the pressure on Hamas to release the Israeli hostages increases. Another related story is about the difficulties in operating an American security company to safeguard the distribution of humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip. A plan to secure the distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza by the American security company Orbis has encountered legal and economic obstacles. With the cost estimated to be about $60 million, it was not yet decided who will pay this bill, as whoever pays this bill will be considered responsible for the distribution. Another concern is the inevitable violent incidents that could cause legal implications for Israel. Initial steps have been taken to bring the company's contractors into the region so they can begin to do the job, but questions remain and the plans have not yet been finalized. So guys, please continue to help us spread the truth. Share our videos on YouTube and follow us on social media. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. We at TBN Israel also invite you to donate to us to help us continue producing up-to-date content about what is happening in Israel through our website at tbnisrael.com/give. Speaking of the truth, there is one more thing I need to tell you today, and that is that although Israelis are happy to see all the battlefield victories that our soldiers are winning, we are also very sad to be losing so many of them. 800 IDF soldiers have fallen since Hamas's surprise attack on October 7 of last year. This includes 757 male soldiers and 43 female soldiers who have sacrificed their lives to defend the country's citizens and its communities. There have been 28 IDF soldiers killed in action just since the beginning of the current operation in the northern Gaza Strip and especially in Jabalia. The enormous difficult and painful numbers of losses is not simple. With that in mind, I want to conclude by paying my last respects to some of these soldiers. This includes Staff Sergeant in Reserves Eitan Ben Ami of the Maglan Reserve Special Unit. He was 22 years of age from Jerusalem, and he was killed in a building collapse in southern Lebanon in recent days. Sergeant Gur Kahati, 20 years of age from Nir Binyamin. This is an Israeli community, a fighter in the 13th Battalion of the Golani Brigade. He is a soldier who fell in a battle at the agricultural fortress in southern Lebanon this week. He was accompanied by Israeli archaeologist Zeev Jabo Hanoch Erlich, 70 years of age, who was also killed. Another officer from the 13th Battalion was also seriously wounded in this incident. The unusual incident, which the IDF has begun to investigate, occurred on Wednesday around 3 p.m. at a relatively deep point of the IDF's ground operation under Division 36, 5 to 6 kilometers from the border with Israel, in an area overlooking Tyre and the coastal plain. Let's unite in prayer for the well-being of all of our fighters. Let's continue to pray for Israel. Let's pray for the IDF soldiers wherever they are fighting, if it's in Lebanon or the Gaza Strip or in Judea and Samaria. Let's pray for the swift and safety return of our hostages back to Israel from Gaza to be reunited with their loved ones. Let's pray for the return of the residents of Israel to the northern communities, to their homes, safely, soon. Let's pray for the peace of the people of Israel, and most importantly, let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem, and together we will win this war because God is on our side.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.